Hello and welcome to the beginning of the regular season finale. We've got 6 matches tonight, and when the dust settles, we should know who's in the playoffs. We should know who's in last. Chris could go either way, depending on how this match goes against current league leader David Webb Ochoa. I didn't get a good look at Webb's first hand. It looked like he had to take a mulligan.
Looked like a bunch of Crucible overworlds and no lock pieces, but I didn't catch a good look of it either.
Wow, strip mine on top. It's a reasonable card to see on the scry.
The second hand is solid. Strip Mine is an interesting one. He has Crucible in his hand already.
Yeah.
He's got Ghost Quarter, which I believe main deck Chris only has one basic, so it is better in game one than it will be after sideboard, although, again, not really the most amazing. Chris
There's no Ancient Tomb and no Workshop for Webb, though. So, he's on the play with Thorn. Yeah, he's in great shape.
Yep. Turn 1 Thorn is pretty fantastic on the play against the Storm deck. Chris's hand has both of his big spells, Yawgmoth's Bargain and Mind's Desire, which is basically like having a mulligan because, well, you can't cast both of them. I think there's some chance Chris will search out a basic here, which actually is not going to go too great for him because the Strip Mine can take care of that, the Ghost Quarter can take care of future ones. But it's not what he's going to go with.
Yeah, I think this hand needs both blue and black mana.
It does, absolutely.
And he had to crack the fetch land to pay the one to get Mana Crypt down through a Thorn.
Yeah, he can't. Webb is a couple mana away from casting Crucible Worlds. He's got a decision right now of whether he wants to use one of his strip effects, which would have to be Strip Mine because Chris does have a basic. I guess that is what he's going to decide to do.
Well, I mean, we don't know that he's going to use one of them, right? He could want to build up to Crucible.
Well, he'd be building up the Lodestone Golem first.
Sure. Build up to Crucible, and then Crucible and Lodestone actually both cost 4 since Thorn taxes non-creatures. So he attacks with...
That's what he's going to do.
Yeah, he's not going to waste that Underground. So we've got a window where Chris only has to deal with one Thorn effect. Webb is... Yeah, next turn he can play Lodestone Golem to get that second effect down.
Yeah, that's pretty close to ending it already, actually.
The Lodestone,
the one Thorn effect on turn 2 is already so good.
All right, it's still Ochoa's second main phase. I think he's debating this Ghost Quarter still.
Yeah, I don't think
he's... Interesting spot. Yeah, the fact that he played the Ghost Quarter instead of the Strip Mine has to mean he's waiting.
There's no reason to just let Chris go get a Swamp. I mean, he could. Cuts him off blue mana. Potentially, but you don't even know what Chris has in hand. He could just go get another one. Wow.
Huh.
I don't understand.
Does that mean he just changed his mind after playing Ghost Quarter over Strip Mine?
Is Chris not playing a basic in his deck?
Does Chris not have basics? Oh. I was with you. You were so confident.
I assumed. It's very hard to not play a basic in this deck, but I guess that is Chris's deck, which is also a reason to not get a basic on turn 1 with your Polluted Delta.
He has 0 basic lands in his main deck. 1 swamp in the sideboard, along with an island and an Ancient Tomb. So he sideboards in 3 lands, 2 of which are basic, but no main deck basics. Now I like Webb's play, and now Chris is just thoroughly screwed.
Well, Strip Mine and Ghost Quarter are just the exact same in that scenario, so it really doesn't change at all. But yeah, this game is completely over at this point. Well, pretty close to completely over. It definitely involves Black Lotus being involved.
Oh, geez. Revoker for the Mana Crypt? That's not fair.
Yeah, it's pretty good. But so is everything.
Yeah. The biggest thing Ochoa did here had to be winning the coin flip. Right? If Chris gets to go... If Chris had won the coin flip, he would have been able to duress the Thorn away.
He didn't have duress his opening hand, but he did have turn 1 Yawgmoth's Bargain.
I thought he did have duress in his opening hand. He definitely had it by turn 2.
Was one of the early draw steps, but he definitely had Desire Bargain, Land, Mana Crypt, Dark Ritual,
and Spirit Guide.
So
yeah, you're right. Yeah, it would have been turn 1 Yawgmoth's Bargain. Chris probably kills him on the first turn if he wins the coin flip.
Huge favorite, yeah. You get to draw 19 cards, or 18 cards, I guess, to crack the Delta.
Wow. But instead, Shops does what Shops does. Turn 1 Thorn of Amethyst. And I mean, Ocho mulligans to it. Didn't have a spectacular draw, but the turn one Thorn was just more than Chris could deal with. Now what?
Chris kept a 1 lander and didn't get there, which turn 1 Thorn will do. It turned off Brainstorm and being able to actually cast any spells, so pretty tough spot. Chris, like we mentioned in the pregame, is boarding at 9 cards. Several of them are lands.
Not the Blightsteel?
Simming Spirit Guide. So a lot of good options there. And then, of course, 3 Hurkyl's Recalls, giving him 4 total, and a rebuild. It's a lot.
Don't you bring in Blightsteel in this matchup? Like, if you have a Blightsteel Colossus in your sideboard and a Tinker in your main, isn't this the matchup where it's at its best?
I don't think there's any matchup where it's playable, but this would be the matchup where it's at its best. I don't really know.
All right, like, given that it's in the sideboard, all right, fine. You think he's just saying, no, Reed, sorry. I tried this guy. Didn't work.
It does seem like this is the matchup where it's at its best, and especially a Shop's deck board again for Leyline of Sanctities against you.
Right.
I assume is in there as one of the answers to Leyline of Sanctity.
Precisely.
It doesn't have a lot of other utility.
Empty the Warrens is also an answer to Leyline of Sanctity. But yeah, Blightsteel clearly capable of winning the game through that. Maybe he's got to know that Ocho's taking out the ensnaring bridges, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. But I mean, one of the very important things to remember when you're Chris Pikula is that if you sideboard in Blightsteel Colossus, you might tinker for it. And at that point, you may have just cost yourself the game because you should not have done that. And so you've got to weigh the pros and the cons there.
Funny. Maybe it's an on the play versus on the draw thing too.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how reliable Tinker is, period. Especially on the draw. On the play, it's pretty great because you can just get it out there turn 1. Your deck is very capable of getting...
Yeah, but on the play, you're just going to Tinker for the memory jar.
Is that better on the play? I don't know. I mean, either way, you're looking great.
Right.
When you get to Tinker on turn 1 on the play.
All right, what's going on with these draws? Chris has Necro, but he cannot play it. Not even close. He has a Hurkyl's. It's basically what his draw has.
And he can play it because he has all lands.
Yeah, Webb there's nothing in that draw except mana.
Yeah, so Webb's got an easy mulligan.
Yeah, and Chris kept.
Well, this is an interesting draw for Webb. He has a Black Lotus, which is... He's got Lodestone Golem for Phyrexian Evoker. Great. He gets a Scry.
You keep this, right? Yeah, I think you keep. It's crazy that you have no mana other than the Black Lotus, but Bazaar Baghdad can find something. You get a Scry. He found Wasteland off the Scry. So Wasteland onto the top. Now you can turn 1 Lodestone if you want to.
Yeah.
Or you can Thorn and Revoker. Chris gets a good look at it.
Strong. I kind of like getting out turn 1 Lodestone because you can cast those other spells on future turns without needing to draw a workshop, which you can't do with Lodestone Golem. But you are getting 2 lock pieces into play, so I guess it really depends on what Pikula's turn looks like. Pikula's got the Hurkyl's Recall in hand, and he's got some fast mana there, so this game is not going to be over no matter what. He's going to be able to likely cast at least 1 Hurkyl's Recall in this game, which will give him, at least a chance.
He just drew a second as well.
Yeah, he's got no action, though, because he just can't cast that Necro. He's not really close to it. He's in the very awkward spot of knowing your opponent has both Revoker and Thorn, so you want to get your artifacts out there, but you don't want to get them revoked. So it's just kind of a bizarre game at this point.
He also kind of would prefer that Chrome Mox to tap for black, which he can't do right now.
Yeah,
so maybe
I think
just
casting Pearl and passing makes a lot of sense. And that is what Chris lands on. So Webb's got the decision now.
If David Ochoa can win one more game, he clinches a bye. He cannot be dragged down into a tie for third. He will be either first or second if he wins this match. He also, by defeating Chris Pikula, would clinch playoffs for Luis Scott Vargas and Rich Shea. So we'll know our 4 playoff competitors if Webb can win one more game.
And where does it leave the bottom half if Chris loses?
6-way tie is live.
So the last match of the night is going to be Chris Pikula against Steve Menendian.
Indeed. Yeah, if we
2-6.
We need all 6 matches to go correctly to create the 6-way tie. Step 1 is Chris loses here.
Yeah, there could be potentially a ton of pressure on Chris Pikula at way past his bedtime o'clock.
Indeed. At least Chris wasn't, complaining about the schedule at all.
Chris is well known for not complaining. Chris, Tom, and myself are like, if there was a team GP for not complaining, we would just kill it.
Dark Ritual's a good draw.
Dark Ritual's a great draw, yeah.
So you sit on Hercules for a turn, and then Ritual Necro? I guess he can... Whew, it's tough.
It's a weird spot.
I think you pass. I think. What a weird spot.
Well, you do have the option to just play Chrome Mox and print the Dark Ritual. That way, if Webb's turn ends up being Thorn of Amethyst, he can still cast Hercules.
Yeah, but then you get hit by Lodestone Golem. You don't want to get hit by Lodestone Golem when you're trying to put the skull into play.
Would be better.
Like he saw Webb's hand, right? He knows there's no mana producing lands in David's hand. So I think this Hercules is pretty attractive. Like that probably kills Lodestone for multiple turns. Unless Webb top decked exactly Mishra's Workshop on exactly this turn, this sends Golem away for a while.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Now, it turns out it's a 1-mana land, and so Thorn's going to come down, but you have a second Hercules, so I think this is okay.
Right. It does mean no clock, and you can just resolve your Necropotence.
Right.
Dark Ritual for 2 mana, Necro for 4. Great price. So he actually has the option here to play the Chrome Mox and imprint the Gataxian Probe. It gets another mana in play and, just gets the cards out of his hand because he's going to be drawing so many.
Yeah, and paying 2 life to draw a card is not super attractive when you're going to play Necropotence.
Yeah, plus you're forced to pay the mana because of the Thorn. So he actually cannot cast Gataxian Probe and Necropotence without drawing a land.
Yeah.
So just empty some cards.
So he pays 2 mana for a Dark Ritual, and then he pays 4 mana for a Necropotence. But hey, look at that. Now Chris has the ability to pay life for cards, and there's nothing attacking him. Webb is, what's the worst Webb can do to him next turn? Put another lock piece down? Chris is sitting on a Hercules Recall. Chris is a huge favorite at this point. Is he, 90 what % for Chris?
It's
got to be over 90. Huh?
Yes. Yeah, it's really, really high. Trying to think what the best thing that can happen right now for Webb. I think it involves Null Rod, but the problem is he doesn't actually have the land to cast it, so he'd have to Bazaar, and he can't actually hit anything, so he can't cast Null Rod this turn.
There's no cards.
Let's hit 0 action again.
Yep.
I don't know how much he boarded out.
Yeah, it's true. He's got all 3 Hercules. That doesn't help.
It doesn't help, but it doesn't hurt. It does mean that
right.
Yeah, he's going to get to set up more good turns. He's discarding Hercules Recall. That's a nice thing for Webb.
But all Chris gets to do next turn is what? Play the Academy, sit on a Hercules, and then Necro some more. He's in danger of Necro locking himself. He's only got 6 more cards he gets to draw.
I would assume he'll play Badlands just because there are 2 Wastelands on the other side. But yeah, there's not much he can... Not much exciting happening right now for Chris. He does still have Necropotence in play, which is always a good feeling.
Yeah. Wow, this Mishra is actually relevant.
Mishra's relevant, but it's still just going to get hit by a Hercules. If it comes in attacking, it's going to get Hercules. So, it is a better draw than most.
Chrome Mox is the name for Webb on that Revoker.
So no draw.
How many do you Necro for here, Efro?
Probably 4.
4, you want to be able to
for
take.
it now.
I mean, 4 and 6 seem like the numbers.
Yep.
Oh, hilariously, he can actually.
6 is reasonable.
Okay, I have a hilarious play for you. Summon Simian Spirit Guide. Block.
I don't hate it.
It's actually decent. Like, I kind of wish I could also Hercules, but I think Summon Simian Spirit Guide is almost the same as Hercules here.
Yeah, I actually have gone from I don't hate it to I think it's just the right play. It also allows you to under necro this turn to set yourself up pretty nicely for next turn to know exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
Sure. Land, Spirit Guide, Necro for 2. Don't have to discard anything.
Yeah, you can't really necro for much more anyway, just because if you do play Simian Spirit Guide, you can't block both creatures. So
yeah.
you can necro for 4 and potentially go to 1. You're turning off your fetch lands then too, which may or may not be relevant. I don't necessarily love turning off Gataxian Probe, although not the biggest deal.
Yeah, he's either going to sit on a Hercules or he's going to summon an ape.
Yeah, I'm not convinced which option is actually better. I think they both have quite a bit of merit.
I mean, he gets hit by the Revoker, or it comes back down is the problem. Like,
yeah, you really don't want to cast Hercules to end step.
Can he cast both Hercules? The Chrome Mox is turned off, so he only has 4 mana. Sounds like
the first Hercules will turn back on the Chrome Mox. So yeah,
True.
He can, because if he casts a Hercules recall, he can just tap, correctly, and if Webb were to then cast a Thorn, tapping out, he could Ritual in response if he needed to, and Hercules again.
So Chris has decided to Necro down to 3.
Sure.
And he's not going to summon an ape. He's going to sit on Hercules. The fact that he can Hercules twice probably does make this line better.
Yeah, he can also use that Hercules or that Simian Spirit Guide as mana that doesn't get impacted by Thorn.
Right. He has to take this Revoker hit, though, I think. Well, it's either that or cast both Hercules. He can cast both Hercules. Ooh, goes down to 2. He's decided he is definitely casting both Hercules, I think. Down to 1. He's got all the cards.
Yeah, he actually is not going to struggle to cast them both. Well, I guess the Wasteland does put a wrench into it a little bit. The awkward part is that if he could have just an 11-card hand, it would be very easy to cast everything he needs to cast.
Yep.
Because he can use the Rituals and Simian Spirit Guides to help him along the way. But that's not legal, so he's going to have to discard, probably something like a Hercules, or he didn't actually draw any lands off that, so Gataxian Probe is a pretty bad one. That will probably go. I think the Memory Jar. Wow. The Chain of Vapor might be better than the second Hercules.
He should chain now, so he doesn't have to discard as many cards. Like, just bounce Revoker, right?
Well, if he bounces Revoker or Thorn, he can't cast Hercules Recall. He won't have blue mana.
No, he turns on the Chrome Mox if he bounces. Oh, if he bounces Revoker.
Yeah, I guess he would have to discard Simian Spirit Guide to cast Hercules. But the problem is, what happens when Webb just plays another lock piece? If you want to respond with Hercules, the lock piece stays in play, and if you let the lock piece resolve, you can't cast the Hercules, so it's kind of weird.
What you're saying is he should have summoned an ape?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's just it looks like Chris is going to win this game. It's just not completely simple, I guess. I mean, he can't die with Hercules Recalls in his hand. Nothing can deal him damage. There's no reach from the Sex deck. Now, all these cards are going to be exiled from being discarded to Necropotence.
Yeah, empty was the last choice, so he's on the General's plan, which seems fine at this point. He's got to discard 1 more, though. Decides on the jar. So this is what? Dark Petition for Yawgmoth's Will?
Yes.
Dark Petition for Yawgmoth's Will looks like it works.
Mm-hmm.
He just needs there to not be a Thorn in play on his turn, right?
That's right.
Like, I don't think this plan works if there's a Thorn in play, so he's going to have to Hercules twice.
I think the plan actually worked pretty easily if there was a Thorn in play, just because he has so much excess mana with the double Ritual and the Academy that he can Hercules on his own turn. Follow that up with Ritual, Petition for Yawgmoth's Will, Ritual, Petition for Tendrils, Hercules' his artifact if he needs to, replay them for Storm Count, and win from there. So it does look like Chris Pikula is going to take this game. Yeah, he really doesn't have to cast 2 Hercules at the end step just because his hand is good enough. The Dark Petition was the key card to find. It locks things up. Yeah, and that should do it. Looks like we're going to see a game 3, which also means Webb is going to be on the play, which is a very different ball game.
All right, here's the combat. Yeah. He's got to bounce Revoker. He can't afford to get hit. Obviously, that kills him.
Yeah, and Webb can actually only replay one thing. If he was able to find... nothing would have really changed it. Even being able to play 2 lock pieces, Chris just has the mana to cast the Hercules first and win from there.
Yep. Here's Thorn, but Hercules followed by Ritual, Dark Petition will get the job done. There's not even a Tinker target in Chris's deck to distract him. Blightsteel's in the sideboard. Memory Jar has been exiled. Chris Pikula, not a fan of the 6-way tie for last.
Yeah, he's giving it his best shot here. He's going to win this game, which is a good way to start. Yeah, the only way he could have potentially, found a way to not have this work out would have been something that I ran into the very first time I played this deck. Was I cast Yawgmoth's Will, cast all the instants in my graveyard, then tried to Dark Petition, and forgot that history still mattered. But there's so many Hercules recalls in there that's going to be pretty tough to have happen. The one thing Chris could mess up here is just casting Yawgmoth's Will without floating black mana, which is exactly what he did. He has no black mana.
Does he have Badlands in his graveyard? He has a bad. Oh, he played a land.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You lost the unlosable game.
He just spent all his black mana on Yawgmoth's Will. You've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, the only way you could lose was to not pitch Simian Spirit Guide first, which there's no reason to hold it, or tap Academy.
Oh my God. Oh, no way. So he's played his land for the turn. He has to tap Tolarian Academy to cast Gitaxian and draw black mana. He just accidentally spent all of his floating mana. Unbelievable.
Yeah, if he just had a black card in his hand, he could
He could Hercules the Chrome Mox and and print a black card on it, but oh, good lord.
Yeah, that
happened. 6-way tie is live. Remember that 6-way tie we mentioned? Well, yeah, all of us who don't want to be tied for last.
Cast the Spirit Guide and block the factory. It's not a big deal. Here comes Mox Jet off the top.
Oh, jeez. I cannot believe Chris did that. Wow. Oh, it's the black card he needs to imprint on Chrome Mox.
Oh, wow, he found a black.
He saved himself. He found a black card so that he can Hercules himself. He can imprint Dark Petition on Chrome Mox. He's fine. He had it the whole way. Calculated, no problem.
Yeah, I've never seen this happen to Chris before.
Oh, holy Pikula.
I refuse to say that this game is over yet, still.
He needs to not Hercules because he needs the spell mastery from Dark Petition. Yeah, 1 mana floating.
Luckily, he can't Hercules.
Wow. On to game 3. Chris Pikula hasn't lost a match yet with this deck.
Well, that's pretty true. This is his second time playing the deck.
I stand by my statement. Wow.
Well.
Now, was this better or worse than Tinker for Blightsteel followed by Chain of Vapor?
Light years worse. Light years worse. I mean, to be fair, all he had to do was cast Chain of Vapor first, and he would have won that game.
I know! All he had to do was tap Tolarian Academy first.
But even after he did that, he was still a favorite to win, because the Time Twister, despite how unreal it was. I think he's still a favorite on a Time Twister hand to win that game. But he made himself 52% instead of 102%. This time he went from 100% to, I don't even know, not too much. How many black cards are in this deck? There's only 12, and then there's a Jet and a Lotus. Lion's Eye would have done it. He already played Ritual, Necro, Ritual, Cabal Ritual, Dark Petition. So he had
sideboarded out his duresses. Yeah, there's not that many black cards in that list, are there?
I would ballpark he had 9 outs, but then -1 because if he just happened to hit the Tendrils, he couldn't exile that. He couldn't win. So maybe somewhere between 8 and 10 is my guess of outs. So he went from 100% to 18. Pretty reasonable.
Wow, always an adventure. Now we go to game 3.
Saying he does not want the easy play.
You even called it. Before he cast the Yawgmoth's Will, you found, the only way Chris can lose this is if he spends all his floating black mana on this Yawgmoth's Will.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he did.
Yeah. He sure did. I don't know. I mean, it's part of the game, but it is really silly to win that way. I would be kind of compelled to just concede. The thing is, when they cast the Dark Petition, you can just concede. You don't need to make them play it out. You're basically hoping for a misclick at that point, or just a really silly punt, which silly punts are part of the game, and it's part of your equity, but at the same time, do you want to win that way? Yeah.
Wow. Webb has a pair of ley lines, but only Wasteland for mana. Yeah. Chris has only a Pearl and a Petal.
Yeah.
So Webb's got to decide first. He keeps Chris mulligans. Chris's hand's pretty good now.
Webb's hand is spectacular with a land. If he's able to find a Workshop, his hand is busted. He just gets no rod into Sphere, but he could also.
He's on the play with no scry. Yeah, crazy.
This is also one of those interesting games where Chris has a lot of extra lands in his deck than he did in game 1. This, let's say Webb does find a land, and let's say it's not even on turn 1, but let's say he finds just another Wasteland in 2 turns. If he wants to cast something like Sphere of Resistance, he could just completely lock himself out of the game.
True. Those no rods are looking pretty good here, though.
No rod is great. No rod's definitely great.
Webb draw mana.
Gotta find a land.
Oh, uncastable spell.
All right,
sorry,
so
he does have a Black Lotus. Not completely uncastable, but close enough.
Well, Chris can just vamp Tutor and go get Yawgmoth's Bargain and cast it.
That seems okay.
He's taken out some damage to do it. He's got to sack 2 fetch lands, cast a Vampiric Tutor, and have a Mana Crypt in play, but...
Yeah, he's got a Vampiric for something here. I mean, honestly, if he had a Blightsteel Colossus in his deck, vamping for Tinker would actually be a good line here.
Oh, it'd be great, because with Hurkyl's Recall in hand, even if, Webb were to find something, he can just Hurkyl's it away.
Yeah, this is exactly the scenario where Blightsteel's actually good. I didn't notice if he changed his sideboarding for game 3.
Didn't look like it. He sideboarded pretty quickly, so I don't think he made any changes, or at least any dramatic ones. Yeah,
Tinker for Jar is also decent, but Yawgmoth's Bargain's probably better.
Yeah. Oh, he can't cast Hurkyl's Recall because of the Leyline Sanctity being in play.
True. He can Hurkyl's himself and set up a big Mind's Desire. How big is his Mind's Desire?
Can't do that because none of his artifacts produce colored mana.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. He runs out of blue mana. If he spends blue on the Hercules, then he doesn't have the double blue for the Mind's Desire.
Right, and if he gets Underground Sea here and cast Vampiric Tutor, he could get Wastelanded.
Yeah, so he went Basic Swamp into Vampiric. Looks like bargain just is the right line.
He will get to potentially Hercules himself in a turn, though. And, you know, I don't know what Chris's plan is going to be, whether he wants to go all in on this bargain to try to win immediately. There's no real reason to. I mean, he certainly can. I guess the nice part is that, you know, you don't have to worry about spheres coming down, but he's in such an incredibly strong position that.
Well, he is going to have to. He's almost certainly going to have to say go, right? Even if he goes off with Yawgmoth's Bargain, he's probably going off with an Empty the Warrens, and he's going to need an attack step.
I mean, if he finds a Black Lotus, he's got a reasonable chance. The Leyline of the Void does mess things up quite a bit because he can't set up a big Yawgmoth spell, which is the best card you can have with Black Lotus.
Right, and the Leyline of Sanctity messes things up a little bit that he can't Tendrils kill without finding a chain first.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be bargain.
I mean, this is Pikula. It could be literally anything.
Ironically, I think he wishes he had a Blightsteel in his deck to tinker for right now.
That would be great.
I mean, if he was tinker for Blightsteel, there's literally nothing Webb can do on that one turn.
It would be 100% over. Yeah, you're correct. Well, he's got to get a card that, you know, an action card. Yeah. So it doesn't really make sense to get Ancestral Recall or Memory Jar when you can get Yawgmoth's Bargain, that I would imagine. It has to bargain.
I mean, you have to put Mana Crypt in play. Like,
yeah.
He's paying 4 life by the time he cracks that fetch land. He's at 16. He has to make sure he doesn't lose to 1 Mana Crypt flip.
Yeah. But let's say you're already giving yourself 2 turns and you're going to lose both flips. And you have 9 life to work with. I mean, draw 9 seems like still the best thing you could be doing. Plus, it doesn't really matter. He can't lose 2 Mana Crypt flips if he doesn't want to because he can Hercules himself.
He can Hercules himself, yeah.
So, he's got at least 12 life to work with.
All right, Chris has made his decision.
We've seen Chris in a lot of... What?
Time Twister? Wow.
Did he board out Bargain? That's not 100... Like, that could have certainly happened.
I think he did. You know what? I think you're right. I do believe he boarded out Yawgmoth's Bargain.
So if he boarded out Bargain and doesn't have Tinker for Colossus, that does make it a lot harder to win. Not a lot of great things happening there. So there's no lock piece in play except for these late lines. Like, all of his rituals and whatever he wants to cast can be cast. Well,
there's the Mind's Desire, but there's no blue mana. There's actual 0 blue mana because he's already played his land for the turn. He can't even cast the Windfall. Right? Unless he probes his way into blue mana?
Yeah.
Into, like... Right. Look at his own hand because of the ley line. And he has Twisted Web into mana. Like Mox, Soul Ring, Wasteland for Thorn and Golem, or just Golem? I think it's just Golem.
Yeah, Chris not being able to cast Hercules Recall and not having a hand that does especially much is a bit of a tough spot.
Yeah.
He just doesn't have the blue mana. Like, this hand would still be fine in the face of lock pieces if he could just Hercules himself, cast a bunch of artifacts, cast Mind's Desire, probably do something good. And he can do that in the face of lock pieces potentially, but not without blue mana.
I know. To be fair, I do think Chris was right to get the basic swamp in the face of that wasteland.
Yeah. I mean, if his Vamp Tutor just didn't really do much of anything.
Yeah, I mean, and that was just a question of the way he sideboarded, right? He didn't give himself Tinker Blightsteel as a thing to tutor for, and he didn't give himself Bargain as a thing to tutor for. So, given
he still had something like Memory Jar, right? Is Memory Jar not just better than Time Twister?
Why is Twister's better than Jar? I think you'd rather spend 5 colorless mana instead of 2 in a blue.
Only because your opponent's doing nothing.
That's fair. You giving Webb back the hand that he had just done only this with is reasonable.
Well, Chris just put in the chat, punted this game too.
How does he think he punted it? while
I
sideboarding?
don't know
Or
what's in his deck or whether he's talking about sideboarding, but if Chris says he punted this game, I believe him. If he didn't say it, I'd be on the fence.
I feel like the most impactful decisions Chris made that were during sideboarding. For whatever that's worth. Yeah, maybe Memory Jar is better than Twister, given how bad Ochoa's hand apparently is.
Well, Webb has a myriad of choices now.
Yeah, but I mean, Chris gets to play a fetch land and sit on a Hercules. Oh, but he can't Hercules him because of the ley line. Right, he can't cast the Hercules. He has to come up with the Rebuild or the Chain.
Yeah. Like, even the Windfall is not doing much because Webb can actually play his whole hand here. He can go Ancient Tomb, Soul Ring, Mox, Thorn, Lodestone.
The Ancient Tomb was a pretty good draw. Just the Wasteland would not have allowed Golem plus Thorn, right?
Nope. Would have been one short.
Yep. Wow. Crazy way to start the evening, that's for sure.
Webb, if he's able to find Tolarian Academy, or Pikula, if he's able to find Tolarian Academy and do some stuff. But he's still going to be facing potentially a Lodestone and a Thorn. Those artifacts he can cast at basically a profit. They're not affected by the Lodestone, and I guess only the Mana Crypt will actually add a mana, but he would have kind of a lot with an Academy. I don't know. This does not look good for Chris Pikula.
Well, can he set up Hercules himself into a Desire?
Well, he's so many blue mana away, he needs Academy. And if there's two pieces in play...
Well, I mean, the two fetch lands would get him the 2 blue. Academy off the top would let him do it in 1 land drop. Fetch lets him do it in 2.
Yeah, it's not over.
He definitely takes a hit from a Lodestone Golem in the middle there, though. All right, so we're on Webb's turn, right? This is Webb's first main phase? Yeah, all right. He's just lining it up. His turn looks relatively straightforward to me. I mean, I guess he was thinking about whether he wanted to try to Bazaar into something more disruptive, but just dump everything, play a Thorn and a Golem looks pretty powerful.
Yeah, I mean, he can play every spell in his hand. That's usually good. I don't know what else you're really looking to do. Pikula will also have the option to draw a bunch of cards off Windfall, but that also means giving Webb a bunch of cards. Well, we'll get to refill with however many cards Chris has.
Yeah, Chris would be windfalling off of his own hand.
Winning these flips would be helpful. He loses.
Nope.
Dark Ritual is not even a profit right now. Break even on Dark Ritual.
Storm count for Mind's Desire.
Yep. Well, that means Chris can't do anything. He can either cast Windfall for 6, essentially, if he wants to, or any other number. That might help him find Chain.
I think this is Fetch Land Pass. Well, what... Can he even cast Mind's Desire next turn if he Hercules himself? Or does he not have enough mana because of the Thorn plus Golem?
9, 10, 7. He can cast it exactly, I think.
Alright, that's my line then.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Fetch land pass.
Hercules costs 4. Maybe I was counting it as 3. He'll have 10 actual mana in play. Hercules is 6. Mana Crypt adds 1, nothing else does. That's 7. No, he'll be 1 short. Can't do it.
Hercules is 4, right?
Yeah, it's kind of Hercules is 3.
Yeah, Hercules is 4, and then Desire is 8 is the problem. So he is short. He's 1 mana short. Yeah, I get the same count you did.
Could draw.
Do you have to pay for... Mind's Desire lets you pay it without paying its casting cost, but do the Thorn and the Golem tax your Mind's Desire cards?
Oh, yeah, I guess it does. Yeah, this is going to be tough.
All right, well, if that's the case, then you just have to windfall. Why is he Dark Ritualing?
Is he casting Mind's Desire?
Oh, he can go Ritual, Mind's Desire for 3?
It doesn't do anything.
It's not crazy.
Well, he can only cast one spell off it, right? He won't have it. He can't cast any spells off it.
Does he not realize that those spells get taxed?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, yeah.
Oh, you've got to be kidding. We are right that they get taxed, aren't we?
I certainly would think so. Yeah, the copies of Mind's Desire are free, but the cards that he wants to play off it, he's got to pay mana for.
Yeah, you play it without paying its mana cost. But they cost more. Maybe they don't get taxed.
He can play a creature artifact.
What did he get? Hercules and...
Simian Spirit Guide.
Simian Spirit Guide, Bloodstained Mire. None of the cards do anything anyway.
Luckily, he couldn't have cast any of them anyway, so no worries. He can cast the Simian Spirit Guide. Not affected by Thorn. So yeah, he invested.
And he did have to pay
a desire to make a 2/2. Happens. So 3-card, 8 mana, 9 mana 2/2.
I think it's actually 12 mana.
Yeah, kind of is.
Once you factor in all the taxes. You got to figure it with the juice, see?
I can't believe Chris had 6 mana and a tutor on turn 2 and couldn't do anything.
Yeah, that's really the story of this game. The Vampiric Tutor on turn 1 to set up a turn 2 where there are no resistors in play. You have access to your entire deck. You have 6 mana, and you can't win. I mean, Time Twister gave him a shot. He has certainly twistered blind and won before. But, yeah. I mean, the blind twister is probably, what, 50-50-ish to win? Maybe 60-40
I think it's way less, actually, just because there are 2 ley lines in play.
Oh, because of the 2 ley lines? Sure.
The ley line of the void especially, just because so many of your twisters involve, getting into mana and then winning with Yawgmoth's Will.
Well, Chris got a bunch of mana, but he didn't really get much to do with it. And he didn't have the blue mana that he needed. What he twisted himself into was a handful of blue cards and a bunch of colorless mana. And now here we are. Lo and behold, Web 7 allowed him to play a Lodestone and a Thorn. So, looks like Chris Pikula is going to spend the rest of the night in the race to avoid last rather than the race to make the playoffs. Webb is going to clinch a bye. Webb is also going to clinch playoffs on behalf of Luis Scott Fargas and Rich Shea. So, congratulations to LSV and Dr. the Atog Lord. They're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, LSV has made the playoffs in all 3 round-robin seasons we've done now, so pretty consistent.
Yeah, he's pretty good at Magic, too. Did you miss a playoff?
No, but...
You've also made the playoffs, all 3. I appreciate the attempt at humility.
And the finals in the shortened season. Not a big deal or anything. I don't know who's...
Oh, yeah. I remember, God, we showed the records at the beginning. Yours was ridiculous. Eric was clearly head and shoulders above the rest of us. All right. Chris is going to show off this windfall. We'll see what happens. Cabal Ritual and Tendrils.
Neither of those cards do anything. Can't cast Tendrils. Even if he could cast it, can't target anyone.
This does also mean that Webb is in first place all by himself. Webb's in first by himself. Eric is in second by himself as we now sort of finish up the round 8 portion of the league and move into the round 9. Rich and Luis are a match behind Efro. So Eric needs to win to clinch a bye, and hope I do him the favor of knocking Webb down into a first and second place tie. Mostly the 4 of you guys now care about seedings rather than whether you're going to make the playoffs.
True.
What a crazy game. Interesting stuff.
Webb and Luis for my losses in this one, so fight him some more.
Yeah, fair enough. It will be Luis who is up next. Congratulations, David Ochoa finishes it up. Yeah, not much Chris could do after the way the time twister worked out. So Chris falls to 3 and 5. We should pull up the standings to make sure everybody can kind of see what's going on here now. They're going to be slightly out of date, but it's pretty easy to see the giant gap with Chris now becoming the 5th player on 3 and 5. Webb up to 7 and 1. We kind of there's the 4 halves and then there's the 6 have-nots, all of whom can still wind up tied for last if the next 5 matches go that way.
Doesn't actually change where anyone is in the standings.
No, it doesn't. Hilarious.
It's a number.
Yeah, Chris will play Steve in the last match. The next 4 are going to be one of those 6th place players against one of our playoff competitors. So the battle for not last versus the battle for seeding. First up will be two of the best, Luis Scott Vargas and Kai Buddha.
Yeah,
that is quite the matchup.
Win to be safe, no matter what. Everyone at 3 and 5 is in the same position. Win and you're safe. Lose and you get to sweat the Chris Pikula versus Steve Menendian match. Definitely a lot of excitement. It's pretty cool that all 5 matches have a ton of meaning there. All 4 of them are going to be playoff seeding or potential relegation, and then the final match decides whether all of that really mattered. If everyone loses and then Steve loses, well, it works out pretty well for all the 3 and 6s. If Steve wins, though, chaos.
All right, stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back with Kai versus Luis.
With Hookah Trade, the world is your trade binder.